Hello everyone. In the previous video, I spoke about the privacy. It was chapter 2. And as you know, we are following the book titled A Gift of Fire. And in this chapter, we will continue to speak about the privacy. And now, as you see from the screen, we continue with the topic privacy risks and principles. Let's think about privacy in everyday situations. When you take a photo or video that includes someone else, when should you ask their permission before posting it? Sometimes it may feel casual, but the impact on the other person can be serious. There is also a difference between something being a courtesy and being an ethical obligation. In some contexts, like private settings or sensitive situations, asking first isn't just polite, it is the responsible thing to do. And this becomes even more complex when we think about deepfakes. If images and videos can be altered or fabricated, issues of consent, identity, and reputation become much more serious. It is no longer just about sharing a real moment, but about how digital content can misrepresent someone entirely. This insight from this analogy is that just like we lock cars and homes, we need strong protections for data. But data security is more complex because once information is copied, you can't really get it back. Some lawmakers have proposed requiring people to show ID or register when buying a prepaid mobile phone. Supporters argue this could help law enforcement track criminal activity and make it harder for people to use anonymous phones for illegal purposes. From that perspective, it is about public safety and accountability. Opponents raise privacy concerns. Requiring identification removes anonymity and creates more databases linking people to their communications. That can increase the risk of surveillance, data misuse, or variations. There is also the issue of access. Prepaid phones are often used by people who value privacy, but also by those who may not have traditional IDs or stable financial resources. So the policy can affect civil liberties and social equity, not just security. The Fourth Amendment is one of the core constitutional protections for privacy in the United States. It says people have the right to be secure in their bodies, homes, papers, and belongings against unreasonable searches and seizures. In simple terms, the government can't just search you or your property whenever it wants. It also requires that warrants be based on probable cause and clearly describe what is being searched and what is being taken. That's meant to prevent broad, unlimited government searches. This amendment was written long before digital technology, but today it plays a central role in the debates about electronic surveillance, data collection, and privacy in a digital age. The Fourth Amendment places limits on the government's power to search our homes, businesses, and personal belongings. It requires probable cause before a warrant can be issued. But new technologies create challenges the amendments writers never imagined. First, much of our personal information is no longer stored in our homes. It's held in large databases by companies and service providers, which changes how privacy is protected. Second, technology now allows the government to gather information at a distance through digital surveillance or remote data collection, sometimes without physically entering a home and without people even knowing it's happening. New technologies now make it possible to conduct searches that seem non-invasive but can reveal a lot about people's lives. Tools like particle detectors, advanced imaging systems, and location trackers can gather detailed information without entering a home or making direct contact. This raises important questions about limits. What kinds of restrictions should apply to these tools? And in what situations, if any, should government agencies be allowed to use them without first getting a search warrant? Let's look at how the Supreme Court has shaped privacy law over time. In Olmstead versus United States in 1928, the court allowed wiretaps on telephone lines without a court order. The reasoning was that the Fourth Amendment only protected against physical intrusion, like entering a home or seizing physical objects. Since wiretaping didn't involve physically entering someone's property, the court said it wasn't a search. At that time, conversations themselves were not seen as protected in the same way as physical property. This case shows how older legal interpretations struggle to address new communication technologies. In this case, law enforcement had attached a listening and recording device on the outside of a telephone booth to record a suspect's conversation. Although Katz versus United States strengthened the Fourth Amendment in some ways, there is a significant risk in relying on reasonable expectation of privacy to define the areas where law enforcement needs a court order. The court has interpreted expectations of privacy in a very restrictive way. For example, it ruled that if we share information with businesses such as our bank, then we have no reasonable expectation of privacy for that information. We share many kinds of personal information as a specific websites where we expected it to be private. Is it safe from warrantless search? This is the question for you. In Kelo versus United States in 2001, the Supreme Court addressed new surveillance technology. Police had used a thermal imaging device to detect heat patterns inside a home without entering it. The court ruled this was not allowed without a warrant. The key point was that when the government uses technology that is not in general public use to learn details about the inside of a home, details that previously would have required physical entry. It counts as a search. This case shows how the court tries to adapt Fourth Amendment protections to modern technology that can reveal private information from a distance. Now we move into the issue of searching digital devices. In traditional law, plain view means that if police are legally in a place and see illegal items in plain sight, they can seize them without a separate warrant. But with computers and smartphones, things are different. Files aren't literally visible until someone opens folders, clicks links, or runs searches. So the question is, when officials are allowed to search a device for one specific thing, how far can they go before they are effectively conducting a much broader search? Digital storage blurs the line between what is truly in plain view and what requires additional legal limits. I want to give an example about Ohio Supreme Court. It ruled that searching an arrested person's phone without a search warrant is unconstitutional. On the other hand, California Supreme Court ruled that search of cell phone was permitted because the phone was personal property found on the arrested person. Eventually, a case raising this issue will be heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. Video surveillance and face recognition technologies raise important trade-offs. Security cameras can increase safety, especially in places that might be targets for serious threats. In those cases, organizers may argue that surveillance helps prevent harm. But the same systems can also reduce privacy, especially when people are recorded and identified without their knowledge or consent. The key question is proportionality. Is the technology being used for serious safety risk or for minor issues? Using advanced face recognition to catch someone with unpaid parking tickets, for example, raises very different ethical concerns than using it to prevent violent attacks. I want to give some examples about it. Police in Tampa, Florida, scanned the faces of all 100,000 fans and employees who entered the 2001 Super Bowl to search for criminals. People were not told that their faces were scanned. Some cities have increased their camera surveillance programs, while others gave up their systems because they didn't significantly reduce crime. England was the first country to set up a large number of cameras in public places to deter crime. A study by a British university found a number of abuses by operators of surveillance cameras, including collecting salacious footage and showing it to colleagues. Some lawmakers have proposed requiring drivers involved in car crashes to hand over their phones so police can check whether the phone was being used at that time. Supporters might argue this could help determine fault and improve road safety, especially in cases involving distracted driving. Opponents would point out that a smartphone contains far more than just call or text records. It holds photos, messages, browsing history, and location data. Allowing routine access could open the door to broad searches unrelated to the crash itself. This connects again to the idea of plain view. When officers look at a device for one specific purpose, how do we prevent that search from expanding into a general review of someone's digital life? A search and seizure of computers and phones. This brings us to the tension highlighted in the San Bernardino case between the FBI and Apple. On one side, the government argues it needs access to digital information to investigate serious crimes and protect public safety. On the other side, technology companies argue that weakening security or creating special access can threaten the privacy and security of all users, not just suspects. The challenge is finding a balance. How do we allow legitimate investigations without creating tools that could be misused or that undermine trust in digital security? This is one of the central privacy debates in the digital age. Ohio Supreme Court ruled that searching an arrested person's phone without a search warrant is unconstitutional. But California Supreme Court ruled that search of smartphone was permitted because the phone was personal property found on the arrested person. Eventually, a case raising this issue will be heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. Here we are looking at a case involving long-term video surveillance. Federal agents placed a camera on a utility pole and recorded weeks of video of a suspect's property without a warrant. Prosecutors argued that no warrant was needed because anyone driving by on a public road could have seen the same things. But the scale and duration matter. A person passing by might see something briefly, but a camera recording continuously for weeks creates a very detailed record of someone's life. So the key question is whether prolonged automated surveillance changes the privacy expectation. Should evidence gathered this way be treated the same as a casual human observation, or as a more intrusive search that requires a warrant? Drones add another layer to the privacy debate. If law enforcement flies a camera-equipped drone or someone's backyard, it may feel very different from an officer standing on the street. The backyard is often seen as a private space, even if it is technically visible from above. The question is whether aerial surveillance using modern technology should require a search warrant, especially when it can capture detailed images or long-term recording. As technology makes observation easier and cheaper, the legal system has to decide where to draw the line between public observation and protected private space. Here we're looking at how data collected for one purpose can end up being used for another. A navigation company collected location data to help drivers with real-time traffic. It then shared anonymous aggregated data with government agencies to improve road planning and traffic flow. But later, police used that same data to decide where to place speed cameras without the company or customers knowing. The key issue is purpose and expectation. Even if the data was anonymized and legally shared, people may feel their information was used in a way they didn't expect or agree to. That is why secondary use of data is such an important privacy concern. Digital cash technologies can make transactions both secure and anonymous. This raises the question of whether people should have a right to make payments without being tracked. For many, anonymity protects privacy, personal freedom, and even safety in certain situations. At the same time, fully anonymous systems can also be used for illegal activities like tax evasion, organized crime, or terrorism. That's where the tension appears. So the debate is about balance. How do we protect privacy and legitimate uses of anonymity while also addressing real risk of misuse? Now we are going to discuss about marketing and personalization. Companies say targeting reduces the number of ads overall the people will see and provides ads that people are more likely to want. Some targeting is quite reasonable. A clothing site does not display winter parkas on its homepage for a shopper from Florida. Some targeting is less obvious. Now let's connect privacy to marketing and personalization. Companies use data mining to analyze large amounts of user data and find patterns about interests, habits, and preferences. That information is then used for targeted advertising, where ads are tailored to individuals instead of shown to everyone the same way. Some people see this as convenient and relevant. Others see it as intrusive, especially when they don't fully understand how much data is being collected or how detailed those profiles can become. Is the complex software that personalizes shopping online merely making up for the loss of information that would be available to sellers if we were shopping in person, such as a person's gender and approximate age? Are some people uneasy mainly because they did not realize that their behavior affected what appears on their screen? Do people understand that if they see ads targeted to their interests, someone somewhere is storing information about them? Marketing and personalization also raise questions about consent and control. In theory, companies should rely on informed consent, meaning users understand what data is collected and how it's used. But in practice, that can be complicated. Browsers have offered tools like Do Not Track, which were meant to signal that users don't want to be tracked. The challenge is that not all companies honor those signals. There is also a growing market where companies buy and sell consumer information, often far beyond what people realize when they first interact with a site. So we have to ask, when someone simply uses a website or service, does that really mean they have agreed to all its tracking and data practices? And how clear and visible should those policies be? If tracking is ongoing, should sites remind users regularly instead of relying on a one-time notice? Some businesses offer discounts to shoppers who use cards that enable tracking of their purchases. Lauren Weinstein, founder of Privacy Forum, argues that practice coerces less affluent customers into giving up their privacy. This is the video for Chapter 2, Part B. I will continue to record from this chapter in the coming week. And please try to watch these videos, because I am adding some external contents to this video, and you should be able to understand the slides better. And if you have questions, please do not hesitate. You can ask your questions via email immediately to me. See you in the next part.